So if you're back from the break, your VirtualBox manager should now showing that both rack 1 and rack 2 are powered off. We will need to attach a new media to these virtual machines. Actually 3, and altogether 3 of them. Continue on. Once you're in the rack 1, you want to click on Settings, followed by Storage. We're going to highlight the controller and add a new attachment. Now, because this is a VirtualBox, the additional hard drive that we're going to plug in will exist in the form of a file. So we're going to click on Attachment, select Add Hard Disk. So make sure you highlight the controller and select Add Hard Disk. We're going to create a new disk. So it will be a VDI. Now it's very important that you create this disk as a fixed size disk. Now because if you use a dynamic allocated disk, it expands on demand. The same location may not be found by 2 machines at the same time. So it's vital, super important that you pick them as fixed size. And we don't need them to be too big, by the way. We're going to create just 2 gigabytes. And you may want to name it ASM ASM1, ASM2, ASM3, I suppose. All right, so we're going to go ahead and create one. I will call it ASM1. 2 gigabyte in size is all we need. We don't need this to be very big. We'll click on Create. And you may also note creating fixed medium storage. There is a path. If you're a student 1 through, I think it's 1 through 14, it should just be on the D drive. If you are a student 15 and 16, it may be on your C drive. In either case, please remember where it is being created. For me, it's on the D, RAC Lab, RAC 1, ASM 1. And I will create ASM 2 and ASM 3. Now continue and repeat the same step to add 2 additional hard disks. VDI, once again, fixed size, make sure it's fixed sized. And this one is ASM2. And also 2 gigabyte. We don't have all that much data to be placed on it, so 2 gigabyte will do just fine. It will be all sitting on my D drive. Correct? In the setting under storage, make sure you highlight the controller SATA. Okay, and then click on Add Attachment down here. I'm hearing ringtone. I'm not sure what that is I'm hearing, but we'll click on Adding Attachment and Add Hard Disk. Is your machine shut down, folks? Don't restart it. You have to keep your machine off. Yeah, your machine has to be off. That's why we did a shutdown before the break, and when we resume, you have to make sure both machines are in a down state. So take your time. We're going to create 3 drives. Yes, it's going to be a VDI. Add hard disk. Make sure it's adding a hard disk, not a DVD. Create a new disk. Make sure it's a VDI. And it must be a fixed sized hard disk. I call it ASM 1, 2, and 3. You can call it anything you want so long as you remember them. Good. So you need to create ASM 1, 2, 3. Add 2 gigabyte is all we are going to need. 2 gigabyte ASM3. As you click on, yes, as it's creating, pay attention to where it is creating it to. So in this case, it's creating it to D-RAC lab, and it should be the same for most of you, except 2 machines does not have a D drive. We are going to mark these drive that we have just created shareable. So what that involves is after you dismiss and click on OK on that dialog box, we want to go to the Virtual Media Manager. You should find the 3 drives you have just added. Now, although it's sorted alphabetically, it's under File, Virtual Media Manager. So in your Oracle VM Virtualbox Manager, under the File menu, there is a Virtual Media Manager. This allows you to mark a hard drive shareable. So what we want to do is go to that Virtual Media Manager. Now I can identify the 3 drive that was just created. ASM1, click on Modify. Make sure it's shareable and click on OK. We will repeat that for ASM2, Modify, Shareable, OK. ASM3, Modify, Shareable, and OK. So once again, it's on the File, Virtual Media Manager, ASM1, ASM2, ASM3, and modify them so they are shareable, or you cannot attach them to 2 machines at the same time. So you have to modify them as shareable. Okay. Once they are modified as shareable, you will then be able to attach them to RAC 2. If you don't mark them shareable, bad thing will happen. So click on Setting to RAC 2. Now we are going to attach them. Same thing, click on the Storage controller, except this time we're not adding a new hard disk. Okay, so slowing it down. This time we're going to RAC 2. Click on Settings. Click on Storage and the controller SATA. Now this time we're going to add an existing hard disk, the same hard disk that we have created using RAC 1. So I'm going to click on Add Hard Disk. This time it's not creating a new disk, it's choosing existing disks. For me, I put them under D drive, RAC lab, RAC 1. Okay. Yours should be in the same place, except if you're Oracle student 16 and 15, it might be on your C drive instead. But in any case, I'm going to attach ASM1 and add, choose existing disk, ASM2, add hard disk. Correct. It has to be in the same order how it is attached in RAC 1. Alright, with that, I'm going to start RAC 1. I'm going to give it some time. Okay, no problem. Yeah. So once you're here, on RAC 2, I went to Settings, I went to Storage, I went to the controller, and I say Add Attachment, Add Hard Disk. and I'm going to choose existing disk. Now, if you cannot find these drives, that means you will have to look at where those 3 disks were created originally. Yeah, for me, it's in the rack 1. It might be identical to you, might be different. You can find out exactly where those files are by going to the Virtual Media Manager. The Virtual Media Manager will tell you exactly where those files are. Okay. And then you can safely start rack 1 and rack 2. Now, there is a way to rename these files. It's just unnecessarily convoluted actually in this platform, so I won't worry too much about it, and you can just delete it and recreate. Alright, now the machine has completed the reboot. You would now have 3 additional devices. You can verify that from your proc file system partitions. We now have SDC, SDD, and SDE. We are going to partition it like we did yesterday. And the sequence involves sudo sudo /sbin fdisk dev sdc. New partition, primary, 1, enter W. Okay, so that's the sequence of keystroke. Once again, it's sudo sbin fdisk dev sdc, N for new partition, P for primary partition. We will take default value for the cylinder and the for both cylinder, the start cylinder and cylinder, and W to write the partition table. We need to repeat that 3 times for SDC, SDD, and SDE. So once again, new, P for primary, 1 for partition 1, enter W. And we'll repeat that for SDE also. So SDD, SDE. Command N for new, P for primary partition, 1, enter W. Now you do not need to do this in rack 2. Okay, you don't need to do this on rack 2. You only need to do this 1 time using rack 1. The partition is ready. Ready for what? Ready for our Oracle ASM to stamp it. So sudo we did this yesterday, create disk. This time we'll call it E1. I don't know, just feels like an E1. Dev SDC1. And we're going to repeat that. Now be very careful. We're going to say E2 is pointing to SDD1 and E3 SDE1. So this will create a stamp that each of these partition is available for ASM use. They will now be considered a candidate disk. Now there are few tools available that we can use to manage the ASM disk group. The most user-friendly one is called the ASM CA. So once again, at this time you probably have not yet sourced in your ASM environment variable, so please make sure you have sourced in the environment variable properly. On rack 1, I am ASM1. Don't forget the plus in front of it. And the utility is called ASM CA. Alright, so don't forget to aura env. Remember it's dot space aura env and my Oracle SID is plus ASM1 on this instance. ASMCA bring up this Java utility. You'll notice the two tab that says volumes and ASM cluster file system are currently dimmed. Some of you may have noticed from reading the alert log from the clusterware that ASM file system or ACFS is not supported on this platform. It is actually supported. We just need a patch to be applied to it. So in a moment, I'll show you how to apply the patch and walk you through applying the patch. Then these two tabs will become available. The ACFS driver has to be loaded for these two tabs to become available. So right now they aren't, and it's okay because we want to focus on creating a new disk group. So when you click on create, you can specify the disk group name. I will call this OCR. I'm going to use that for OCR storage. And I will make all three disks as a normal disk group. Fang, you don't want to do SDB, you want to do SDC, SDD, and SDE. Fang. And yeah, it's you have to do a sudo /sbin/fdisk dev SDC. This is the complete command. And make sure it's SDC, SDD, and SDE. Right, right. It's fine. We haven't started configuring them yet. All right. So you should be seeing this screen here. Okay. And we are going to click on create to create a new disk group using those three disks we have just added. I'm going to call this disk group OCR because that's what I'm going to use to store the OCR. So I'm going to click on create. And this group name would be OCR. It will be normal redundancy this time with 3 disks. I'm going to check all 3. That's a quick way to check all 3. You may also want to click on show advanced option. You can set your AU size right here, the database compatibility, and ASN compatibility. Now what does that mean? What that means is this is the minimum version of the ASM instance that can mount this disk group. So in other words, if you have an ASM that's 10G2 or 11.1, it cannot mount this disk group. That's ASM compatibility. It's assigned to each disk group. The second compatibility is called database compatibility. This is a version of the database client. What version of database software can use this disk group? Okay. You will have to click on the advanced option to see these sections. You want to specify the disk group name OCR, choose all the candidate disks, show advanced options. Now you don't need to worry about ADVM yet. We don't have ADVM support at this time without applying the patch at the moment. Are you able to see it? Please let me know if you're able to see it. Okay. Are you able to bring up ASMCA? Turn 10. There are 3 levels of redundancy. High means the data on the disk will be mirrored 3 ways. The loss of any 2 drive will be okay. Normal means the data will be mirrored 2 ways. The loss of a single drive will be fine. External means there is no mirroring of the data, period, in which case losing of a single drive requires you to restore data. Now you need to, when you say a normal, you specify failure groups. The failure group indicates that all the disks within the same failure groups are likely to fail together. So right now you can't really see the differences when you have 3 drives, but here is a proposed scenario. Let's say you have 2 SCSI cards. Each SCSI card is connected to 2 hard disks. And let's call these 2 hard disks A, B, C, and D. Now, it would be unwise to mirror the data between C and D, because if you mirror the data between C and D, if the adapter goes out, both C and D's are gone. So it will be wise if we can somehow tell Oracle, hey, C and D is in the same field group, and A and B is in the same field group. Therefore, mirror the data between field group instead of within field group. So in other words, this will allow you to indicate to the ASM instance what are likely to fail together. Now, if you want to put an OCR in a normal disk group, you have to have 3 failure groups. That's why we use 3 disks. Okay, so I'm going to call it F1, F2, F3. If you don't choose one, one will be chosen for you anyways. And the ASN compatibility means the minimum version of your grid infrastructure that can mount this disk group. Okay. And your database compatibility means the minimum version of your database software that can mount this disk group. That's your database compatibility. Now, the compatibility also affects what feature is available from the disk group. So we're going to click on OK here.